I will praise Thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are Thy works, that my soul knoweth right well. We will look at man. Man. As incredible and remarkable as birds and insects and fish and mammals and reptiles are, and they are very remarkable, man is all the more incredible and remarkable. Augustine said, men go abroad to wonder at the height of mountains, at the huge waves of the sea, at the long courses of the rivers, at the vast compass of the ocean, the circular motion of the stars, and they pass by themselves without wondering. Good point. Man is the pinnacle of God's creation. He is not an animal. He is different in many ways from the animal world. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him, male and female created He them, and God blessed them. Man alone was created in the image of God. Man alone was given an eternal soul. When Jesus died on the cross, He died for man alone. There's a remarkable variety and beauty that is evident in the animal world. But animals are still just animals. Now I know there are people who disagree with that. And you can have your poodle eat at your table if you want. And sleep in your bed. You can knit him little sweaters. Let him ride in the front seat of your car while your husband has to ride in the back. And you can get his hair permed with little bows, and you can get his nails done. But he's still just a dog. And don't take this too hard, but he's not going to go to heaven when he dies. Not even to doggy heaven. Before Christmas, I heard a pet expert on the radio talking about how people, without thinking, leave their pet out on Christmas. Not as in outside, they just don't buy them presents. And he said that the pet can feel very hurt, and he's serious. And he said that the pet can feel very hurt that they don't get presents to open. And that may be. But you know, I got thinking, my dog has never bought me a Christmas present either. So she's just going to have to learn to deal with the hurt. Besides, not only do we leave her out, but we leave her outside as well, so she doesn't even know that we're opening presents. But he went on to say that a very meaningful gift to give your pet would be a gift certificate to get neutered. And he's serious. First of all, my dog can't even read. Secondly, if she could read, I'm not sure she'd understand. And thirdly, even if she could read and understand, I'm sure she wouldn't appreciate it. But he thought that would be very meaningful, and he's going on and on like this, and he's dead serious. There are some people out there that are scary, what they emphasize and what they get into. Animals are just animals. A while back they surveyed people and asked them if their dog and a total stranger were both drowning, and they could only save one, their dog or the man, which would they choose? An alarmingly high percentage said their dog. They followed it up with a radio program, and it had people call in, and some people were just indignant that some people would save the man. They couldn't fathom that. They said a dog that had served you faithfully for all these years, and the man, for all you know, could be a mass murderer. Of course you should save your dog. But that's how far we've come in America. An animal is just an animal. Now, you don't mistreat them. You're to treat them correctly, but they're still just an animal. Well, man has an eternal soul. Just for the record, one human being is worth more than all the spotted owls that have ever lived. And God, in His wisdom, put so much into the creation of man that it defies comprehension and understanding this morning. When you understand or begin to try to fathom all that God put into His creation of man, it's unbelievable. In fact, we'll spend 3 or 4 weeks on man and really only scratch the surface. There are so many things we take for granted that are remarkably and amazingly complex and so creatively designed. Consider your eyes this morning. Eyes are mentioned more than 500 times in the Bible. Sir Charles Sherrington, a widely respected scientist in his day, wrote, "Behind the intricate mechanism of the human eye lies breathtaking glimpses of the master plan. In the dark, the sensitivity of the human eye increases 10,000 times. 10,000 times. The eye can detect a faint glow less than 1/1000th as bright as a candle's glow. It can discern light from the stars, the nearest of which is trillions and trillions of miles away. To see, the image focused on the lens of the eye falls on the screen, if you will, at the back of the eyeball, the retina. The retina has almost 130 million cells. Science Digest states that from the vast panorama presented by your eyes and looking around, each one can send an estimated 1 billion impulses per second to your brain. And then your mind sorts it out and chooses significant details. 1 billion impulses per second your eyes send back to your brain. Your brain takes those 1 billion impulses per second and makes sense of it, organizes it, and sorts it out, and responds to it. David said, "I will praise Thee. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are Thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well." Oh, when God designed you and when He designed me, He put into us some tremendously creative genius and His love and His interest and His care. The eye's lens changes its curvature to focus on objects near or distant. The pupil is self-adjusting, and these adjustments are automatic, requiring no thought or conscious decision. It just happens. We get all excited about a camera that can kind of self-adjust and kind of focus in certain ways and under certain conditions. The eyes can focus and adjust continuously under any and all circumstances. The complexity of perceptual cells that enable us to see is an incredible thing. 127 million cells called rods and cones line up in rows as the seeing elements that receive light and transmit messages to the brain. Rods are slender cells that reach out toward the light and outnumber the cones 120 million to 7 million. These rod cells are so sensitive that the smallest measurable of light, unit of light, 1 photon, can activate them. We're told that under optimum conditions, the human eye can detect a candle at a distance of 15 miles. However, with rods alone, we would only see shades of gray and black, and we would not get the resolution and detail that the more complex cones provide. In that sea of rods, those 120 million rods, the cones tend to concentrate in the precise spot of the eye where focusing is the most acute. Cones are 1,000 times less sensitive to light, and yet they make possible the perception of colors and fine details. Our assortment of rods and cones lets us see things at the end of our noses and also several miles away. How does the process of sight work? How is it that we can see things? Light streaming through the sky bounces off external objects and enters the eye. To that extent, the eye operates somewhat like a camera, with precise shutter and focusing mechanisms to admit and record the light, a variable pinhole lets in mountains and trees, and skyscrapers and clouds and elephants, even a tiny flea. And all of that can be brought in. Once the physical image reaches the retina, the activity of the eye ceases to be like a camera. From there on, everything is electricity. Technically, we do not actually see with the eye, but rather with the help of it. The images transmitted back to Earth by many of the spacecraft during the last few years are actually reconstructions by computers of thousands of bits of information, so that in all actuality, you have not really seen Jupiter, but electronically enhanced reproductions of data about Jupiter that have been converted into a computer program. The eye functions in a similar manner. Similarly, our brains do not receive photographic images of anything. Rather, some of the 127 million rods and cones get excited or activated by light waves, and they fire off messages into the 1 million fibers of the optic nerve. That optic nerve coils like a thick cable back into the recesses of the brain. Impulses from the retina race along the fibers of the optic nerve, fan out in the brain, and finally enter into the visual cortex, stimulating the miracle of sight. And that cortex, that portion of the brain, has to process an estimated 1 billion messages a second coming in from the retina. Only in the past several years have scientists begun to understand in detail how the process of sight even works. A great deal of research has gone on in recent years using anesthetized animals. It has given a great deal of insight into how the visual cortex sorts out and responds to these electrical signals that we just take for granted. They've opened up animals' heads, and after locating the visual cortex in the brain, they attach an unimaginably slender microelectrode to a single brain cell. Then they will place a variety of different shapes and sizes and movements and patterns and colors and everything else before the animal's eye and meticulously record which objects or patterns or colors or shapes or sizes that cause that particular cell to fire or to respond to the stimulus. The receptive field of any particular cell is very narrow and particular. It may only fire or respond when a horizontal bar at a 30-degree angle is placed in front of it, or some cells only fire when a large spot is placed in front of the animal, or a small spot. Some cells respond to light, some to shadows, some to motion, some only to darkness, some to stationary items, and some only record the boundary regions between light and dark. The Nobel Prize-winning scientist who first charted these patterns in the brain cortex stated that the number of neurons responding successively as the eye watches a slowly rotating propeller is scarcely imaginable. So you take a propeller and allow it to slowly rotate, and as the eye follows that propeller, those rods and cones, those cells fire off one right after another, millions of them, all in proper succession of order, so that your brain can accurately transmit and record what's taking place in front of you. He said it's scarcely imaginable. If you could watch it happen, it's unbelievable. It's a mind-boggling thought that when we see, we're totally unconscious of the process of cells encoding data and firing in response to it, and then uncoding it, reassembling it within the brain. When you go outside and you look at Mount Baldy, it comes to your consciousness, not as a series of dots and light flashes, but as a mountain, whole and complete and intelligible and complete with meaning. The very ability to transpose units of messages into ever higher strata of meaning is only possible because of the inner functions of the secluded brain. Cells inside that sheltered mass have no immediate experience of light and dark, shape or form or size or depth or motion. Yet every single bit of data transmitted by your eyes terminates there. In fact, no sensation truly registers until the brain has taken hold of it, translated it, made sense of it. Our eyes take up only 1% of the weight of our heads. Yet how important and valuable and necessary that 1% is. To protect those valuable instruments, God has given us eyelids that open and close some 30,000 times a day. These shutters wash the windows of your eyes clean every few seconds by painting the surface with fresh salt water. If they didn't do that, you'd go blind. It happens without you even giving it conscious thought. Your body just automatically does that. You don't have to tell your body to do that. Your body is just programmed to trigger in response to certain stimuli and signals. And it responds correctly. You know, many leprosy patients, those cells that should fire off those subconscious messages have been eaten away. And the process has been short-circuited, and there's some problems. And so because of that, many leprosy patients don't know to blink. Their eyes are never told to blink. So eventually, over a process of time, their eyes completely dry out and they go blind. If they can catch those patients in time, they have to teach them with means of a stopwatch and signals to consciously blink, to not let a long period of time go by without blinking, and they have to on purpose blink. How difficult that would be. Yet God has made man, until disease or some other problem ravages his body, man in his normal condition, all of that is just taken care of automatically. You don't have to sit there and think, it's time to blink. It's time to blink. I better blink. It's time to blink. Think how little you'd get done if you had to consciously think blink all the time. Count to 10 and then blink. Count to 10 and then blink. You'd have a hard time functioning. Most of us have a hard time doing two things at once anyway, so some of us, we just blink. Well, at least I'm blinking. At least I can see. I haven't amounted to anything in my life, but I can still see. Here in Sunday school, you know, these motion songs bother me. Singing for some of us is a labor to begin with. We have to fully concentrate on what we're doing. And then you throw in motions. His banner over me is love. Instead of thinking, I should have been in the back talking with somebody so I wouldn't have to do that publicly. Try to sing and do that at the same time. If I had to blink as well, we'd lose it all up here. I had to concentrate on that. But God has so programmed our body to take care of all of those things automatically. We never even give it any thought. And most of the time we don't even really appreciate it. But a leprosy patient does. God took care of all of that. That our bodies would be able to function automatically. We'd be able to do the other things that we need to do or that we want to do. All of that takes place without us even thinking about it. Without giving it any conscious thought. We spent all of our time this morning in just one area. And there was a reason for that. We're dealing in the series with the evidence for a Creator God. And the evidence against evolution. The evolutionist teaches that way back down the evolutionary chain, early primitive life forms had soft areas or sunspots on their heads, and over the process of time, those evolved into eyes. That's how we begin to be able to see. You know, the first amoebas that oozed up on land and slimed out of some pond somewhere, they couldn't see, they were blind, according to the evolutionary theory. And after sliming around for a while and bumping into things and being out under the sun, eventually some eyes begin to form in those crude beginning single or small-celled creatures. But you know, without eyelids, we would go blind. If you had to look at the sun and you did not have the use or function of eyelids, you'd go blind. The sun will literally make you go blind. In fact, that's been torture in some countries in war and stuff. That's one of the things that they would do is cut off someone's eyelids and make them stare at the sun and go blind. And if those early creatures formed eyes through the process of evolution without eyelids, those early creatures would just simply go blind as soon as they formed eyes. And according to the evolutionist's own theory, those creatures could not form eyelids until they had eyes because there was no need for the eyelids. They could not anticipate the eyes. Those just kind of happened. So if they formed the eyes first, they would go blind and never even get the eyelids. If they formed the eyelids first, that stands in contrast to the evolutionist's own theory. So there's a problem there. There's all kinds of problems when you begin to believe the theory of evolution. There's all kinds of difficulties, and there's all kinds of questions, and there's all kinds of things that cannot be answered. that they have no idea. It takes a tremendous amount of faith to believe in evolution, to believe that those early creatures somehow just begin to evolve eyes, and that those creatures gave birth to offspring that picked up somehow where they left off, and their eyes became increasingly complex, until now you have human eyes with 127 million cones and rods that are able to do what we've discussed this morning. Oh, it takes a lot of faith to believe in evolution. Why are some people, in the face of abundant information and evidence to the contrary, so determined to believe and to prove evolution? Because they don't like the alternative. Because they don't like the alternative. In light of what we've talked about this morning, Psalm sums up the issue very nicely. Psalm 94 said, Ye fools, when will ye be wise? Ye fools, when will ye be wise? He that planted the ear, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, shall he not see? He that teacheth man knowledge, shall not he know? The Lord knoweth the thoughts of man. Ye fools, when will ye be wise? He that planted the ear, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, shall he not see? He that teacheth man knowledge, shall not he know? The Lord knoweth the thoughts of man. The alternative to evolution is that we were created by Almighty God. The God who could create something as miraculous as the human eye can surely see everything we do. And a God who can create the human ear, we didn't have time to talk about it this morning, but it's unbelievably miraculous. A God who could create the wonder of the human ear can surely hear everything we say. And a God who can create the human mind surely does know the thoughts of man. And when we acknowledge those things, there are some considerations and consequences that affect our lives. Psalm 100 verse 3 says, Know ye that the Lord, He is God. It is He that hath made us, not we ourselves. We are His people. There is accountability to God if He made us. Genesis 16:13 says, Thou, God, seest me. Psalm 11:4 says, The Lord is in His holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold. His eyelids try the children of men. In Jeremiah 23:24, the Lord asks the question, Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, saith the Lord? Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him? Oh, a God that made our eyes, He can surely see us, even when we try to hide. Proverbs 15:3 says, The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. So what hope is there for us this morning? Especially since Psalm 5 tells us that Thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with Thee. The foolish shall not stand in Thy sight. And yet, He's a God who sees everything.